Wisst ihr noch, wie alles angefangen hat? Mit der ersten Seite, die so spannend war wie keine zuvor. Mit Geschichten, die uns Raum und Zeit vergessen lassen. Und plötzlich ist es Mitternacht und wir lesen immer noch. Es geht um Bücher, die uns in fremde Welten entführen. Ohne Kompass und Karte. Dafür mit Elfen, Zwergen, Drachen und Dämonen. Es geht um ferne Länder, die es nur auf dem Papier und in unserer Fantasie gibt. Mittelerde, Westeros, Ketterdam. Es geht um die Autorinnen und Autoren, die diese Welten geschaffen haben. Und die Leserinnen und Leser, für die sie eine zweite Heimat geworden sind. Das ist die Magie des ersten Satzes. Das ist BOOKSTOCK.
Herzlich willkommen zum großen Finale von BOOKSTOCK Fantasy, dem Hugendubeln-Festival. If you're watching this right now, stay tuned. We are going to meet all your favorite authors and chat. You can ask your questions right away. I'm not speaking Elvish, I'm speaking German. So, ihr Lieben, jetzt kommen wir zu unserem großen Finale hier mit unserem englischen Line-Up. Heute sind dabei Holly Black, Peter V. Brett, Jennifer Estep, Naomi Novik, Kevin Hearne und last but not least Benedict Jacka. Und nochmals als Hinweis, heute Abend endet das Gewinnspiel um 23:59 Uhr. Morgen werden dann schon die Gewinner ermittelt und benachrichtigt. Also einfach die Shows von gestern und von vorgestern einfach nochmals gucken auf Instagram, einfach auf IGTV klicken. Da sind die Videos von Freitag und von Samstag schon online. Das Video von heute gibt es nach der Show dann, nach einer kurzen Zeit auch online oder natürlich auf YouTube. Einfach einen Kommentar dalassen mit, was hat euch am besten gefallen, was war euer erstes Fantasy-Book, welcher Autor war am lustigsten, egal was. Tobt euch aus und dann könnt ihr schon gewinnen. Pro Tag gibt es die Bücher zu gewinnen von den Autoren, die mitgemacht haben. Und vielleicht ist ja ein signiertes Buch dabei. So, jetzt kommt mal mit, denn wir fangen schon an mit unserem ersten fantastischen Line-Up, nämlich mit einem World-Building Panel. Und ihr habt natürlich jetzt auch schon die Möglichkeit, egal wo ihr gerade zuguckt, auf IGTV, auf Instagram oder auf YouTube einfach eure Fragen zu stellen. Und das ist sozusagen meine magische Aufgabe, die Fragen an die Autoren weiterzugeben. So, ich gucke jetzt schon mal hier, ob schon was reinkommt. Und jetzt begrüßt bitte ganz, ganz herzlich mit mir Holly Black, Peter V. Brett und Jennifer Estep. Hello, Holly. Guys, great. It's really great having you here. So, we start with Holly. Holly, where are you right now?
I'm in Amherst, Massachusetts, in the United States.
Very good. And Holly, your book is. Have you ever seen the German version of your book?
I have. It's beautiful.
Have you ever pronounced it?
I'm not sure that I have.
You want to try, or should I help you? I don't know if it's possible if you see it. Wie der König. I will read it to you. So you sound how
you have
German.
To. I'm sorry, I can't quite see it.
Yeah, German sounds very Elvish. Wie der König von Elfenheim lernte Geschichten zu hassen. I think it's a wonderful title, of course. What do you think? Does it sound Elvish to you?
Well, so I have a lot of family in Switzerland. Oh, okay. So it sounds like my family in Switzerland is saying it.
it's saying to you. So what is the magic of this book? Because it has a lot of fans, of course, in Germany.
So this is a fairy book itself. It's set in a world that is like an onion skin on top of ours. So we have fairy, and it is happening now. It is in our world, but we don't see it. And this is a conflict that is largely political between a bunch of different forces in fairyland. and a human girl who has become embroiled in it by virtue of being raised in that world by the guy who killed her parents and took her and her two sisters.
And it has, for every fan, it has really wonderful designs. So, Jennifer, your book, it's actually the same title like in English. It's very easy. Kill the Queen. Tötet die Königin would be the German title, but I think the English title is better. What is the magic of what is the world we encounter here? Without spoiling the other books.
Okay. So that is set in my Crown of Shards epic fantasy world. And it's kind of like Gladiator meets Game of Thrones with a kick-butt heroine. The world is filled with gladiators. You have like troops who go around, very much like, soccer or football championships, in Europe and the United States. And it is about this woman. She is very distantly in line to inherit the throne of her kingdom. But a royal massacre happens and she has to go undercover with a gladiator troop in order to survive and try to figure out, how to get her revenge against the people who killed her family.
So at the last quick introduction, Peter, last but not least your book. Yeah, that's the German title again. The original is The Desert Prince. Did you ever get the German one?
So you can probably see behind me, I have all of the German editions of my book so far, but this one, because it just came out last week, yeah,
we will send it. We will send it to you.
Anyway, no, it just hasn't come yet. So I would say that's Der Prinz der Wüste. Is it Wüste?
Der Wüste. Der Prinz der Wüste. But very good. Yeah.
Okay, close. Normally I would be in Germany this week because the book just came out, but it's 2021 and we don't do normal things anymore.
Yeah, we hope that all of you are going to come to Germany soon. And yeah, what's happening in this book? It came out last week in Germany.
So this is the first book in a new series called the Nightfall Saga. It is set in the same world as my Demon Cycle books, which people are probably very familiar with. But it occurs 15 years later with a whole new cast of characters and a new set of problems. So people who enjoyed the first series, like that ended with a firm ending and it's done. New readers can start reading this series and enjoy it without having read any of my other books. But if you have read my other books, you'll see some beloved characters show up as cameos and disapproving parents. And the story is essentially, I don't know if you've ever felt like you were a disappointment to your parents. Like I know sometimes I have, like who you choose to be with or what you choose to do with your life. Imagine if your parents literally saved the world. How do you feel like anything other than a disappointment after that? Like how do you measure up to that? And so this new series follows the children of the previous series as they try and discover who they are and encounter some big real world problems they need to solve as well. So it's something that anyone can pick up this book and start, whether they've read my other books or not.
So I think now you're not a disappointment to your parents, but
I hope not.
I'm pretty sure.
When I quit my job to be a writer, they were kind of worried.
I know that feeling. And so we want to talk about world building. So for you guys, it's a question to all of you, and of course it's a panel talk. So if you have questions to each other, I don't know if you ever met, but we made it possible now due to the pandemic. What is the hardest and what is the most fun when you build a world? Maybe Holly.
Okay. So I think the thing that I try to focus on when I'm trying to build a world, it took me a long time to figure this out, was that the magic has to be story generative. It has to go somewhere. It has to be like there's a lot of ideas that I have come up with in my time that seemed cool, but didn't create more story. And so that's one of the things that I focus on. I think it's some of the hardest stuff And also, I think it needs to be thematically consistent with the story I want to tell. All stories are about people for whom the worst thing is about to happen. If you had a secret you were never going to tell anyone, you're going to tell someone in this book. If you have a terrible fear that you thought you would never have to face, you're going to have to face it because you're in a book. And so I think when you're building a world, to some extent, you have to go back and forth when you're writing, at least with that first book, with the kind of story you're going to tell, with the way it feels, and what kinds of world building will accentuate that feeling and allow you to do the stuff you need to do. I think that's some of the most difficult stuff, because you'd like to just sit down and build a world that's fun, but that's not going to work. It has to be entwined with the story you want to tell and with the feeling you want to have that story give the reader.
Yeah, and for me, I think I want a world I want a world that has most of the same problems that our world has, so that I can talk about them, in stories, and that the characters can struggle with them and hopefully find insights that that are reflective of my readers' problems and lives, so that they can relate to the characters. Because if you create a fantasy world that's so different from our world that people don't relate to it, then there's no emotional resonance. You want to create emotional resonance with your readers. And so that means creating a world that is different enough from ours that nobody feels like they're being singled out or pointed at, but also close enough to ours that the problems that are faced by the characters are relatable to modern readers. And so I think that's sort of the balancing act of how to create a fantastical, magical world, but also have it be something that people can relate to and understand. And when the characters come to sort of emotional quandaries, it's something that the readers can say oh, I had a problem like that in my life too. Maybe
I would
not a
say
demon charging you. Go on, please.
Sorry about that. I would say for me, one of the most fun things is just coming up with the magic for my heroine and thinking about what are some really cool things that I can do with this power. For example, in Kill the Queen, one of my heroine's superpowers is she can smell people's emotions. And a lot of other people in the book look down on her because of that. But, it really comes in handy for her because she can tell what people are feeling and kind of what they're thinking. So it really helps her a lot in the end. So I love kind of putting different twists on, the powers that I come up with. And I would say for me, especially writing epic fantasy, one of the hardest things is just naming everything, because every single thing in the book has to have a name, a town, a river, a castle. And, I get really tired of trying to name all that stuff after a while, which is why I use a lot of mythology names in my books, because it's kind of something familiar that already exists. And then they also, can tie into the story and have some deeper meaning with the magic and the world building and everything like that.
Do you have a big book of baby names that you use?
That's what Google's for.
All right. I guess books are, most authors I know have a book of a big book of baby names that they use when they're looking for.
I do have some mythology books that I will look through. Good old Bullfinch's mythology.
What's interesting is I also have a character, and one of the main characters in my book can smell emotions, and it was both fun and incredibly challenging to write sometimes. So that's really interesting.
So, question to Jennifer: how was it to write an assassin, and what was your favorite character? The people are asking in the community right now, so the chat questions are coming in.
Well, I love writing my Elemental Assassin series. I think book 14 or 15 recently came out in Germany, and here in the States, I'm up to book 19. I always have loved assassin stories. I think there's just so many different, stories and worlds that you can come up with assassins. And, with my Elemental Assassin series, I wanted to create a character in Jim Blanco, who is okay with being the bad guy and kind of being the villain if it means that she can help other people. So those are some of the reasons that I decided to write an assassin story.
So like I said, the community is still asking questions. Holly, you announced that you are currently writing a new book. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So I think that So the book that I have that's coming out in May is my first adult book, and it's called Book of Night. And I'm excited about that. The thing I think they're asking about is the book I'm writing after that, which is a fairy book, which I can't talk about.
So, like I said, there are a lot of questions coming in, so don't worry if I sometimes switch some up. Peter, how was it? No, where did you get the idea from the Warded Man?
Where did I get the idea? That's a... authors get this question all the time. And I think for us, we got ideas from a lot of different things, but like when we're asked the question, we have to like, what's the one thing that's gonna sum it up? I think that I had wanted a magic system that was based in hard work and practice rather than inheriting some sort of bit of magic. And so I designed this sort of like symbol-based magic system that's based in the idea of like symbols that repel evil is something that every culture has. And so I felt like it was something like monsters come out at night and there's these symbols that repel them is sort of like a running theme in almost every culture. And so I wanted that, but it wasn't until I got the mood for the book that it really took off. And the mood came from being in New York City on September 11th. I think that during the attacks, everyone was scared and everyone was scared in a different way. And I felt very like aware of the fact that some people, you know, were scared and their reaction to that was to run and help. And some people were scared and their reaction was to run away. And some people were scared and they didn't know what to do. And some people were scared and they were like, well, you know, we might as well just get a pack of beer and wait this out, you know? And so watching everybody react differently made me feel like, okay, well, if you lived in a world where demons came out every night and everyone was terrified, how does that make you treat each other? How does that make, what is, you know, like, how do you live your life when you're that scared all the time? And it was that sort of theme that really tied that first book together and made it resonate emotionally in a way that I thought the readers would really comprehend, particularly at that period in time when I was writing it.
You know, you're talking
got a little
about,
serious there.
you're talking about ideas and like how people talk about them. And when you were talking about that feeling, it just made me think about how much that is how I start books a lot of times, is trying to find that feeling. And then like sometimes I'll have a character and a feeling and, you know, I'll go to my friends and I'll be like, what could happen in this book? I want it to feel the way that I feel when I look at this picture. They're like, this
Right.
isn't a way to talk about story. But I think a lot of times that like the feeling is what people start with more than story. And that's really hard to talk about when people say, where did the idea come from? And you're like, well, I had a feeling in my heart. I wanted you to have it too.
So a question
But
to all of you.
that's what makes it resonate.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, sorry. What do you want to say, Peter?
No, it's fine.
Actually, a question to all of you is it tougher to write a love scene or a fight scene? Cool question.
I will say for me, it's harder to write a romantic scene just because I really love writing fight scenes. I mean, I can kill people all day long in my books. I don't have a problem doing that. But I think for me, writing a romantic scene, you have to layer in so much emotion. Like Holly was talking about, you know, the feeling that you feel for your characters. So for me, the romantic scenes are harder to write than the fight scenes.
I think I think it's interesting that you group those two things together because I think they have a lot of the same difficulties. They both share a lot of received language, like language where it's all sort of, and like we have whole sentences that we've heard a million times. And that one of the things that we have to do is figure out how to take scenes that we have seen before and we understand a lot of the language around them and, you know, find ways to mix up the language, find out ways to, you know, invest people with the right, you know, with enough emotion. You know, fight scene can't just be a fight scene. A romantic scene can't just be a romantic scene. They all have to advance the plot. And so, you know, it has to do, it has to feel fresh in a way that is very difficult when you have that much received language.
I agree. I do think that it's easier to build conflict than it is to build love or like a chemistry, I guess is the word that we would use, like chemistry between two characters. It's much easier to push two characters into conflict than it is to create chemistry for them. But in both cases, like, you have to be fighting for a reason. There has to be something at stake. It has to advance the story. But writing fighting is just so much easier for me than writing romance, because you don't always have to create this like chemistry between the two characters who are in a fight that you do when they're falling in love with each other. So I can sit down and write a really good action scene pretty much anytime, but like I feel like you have to lay a lot of groundwork to make a love scene, because you have to build up to it over time to get to the point where the characters can really connect enough that the readers will feel like, okay, I feel like these characters have chemistry and this works. And so I do feel like that's more work, but when you get it right, the payoff is so much greater because of the effort that it takes to get there. Sort of like falling in love.
So a quick question.
I think romance can be tension, though. I mean, it's interesting because I think of that stuff as being conflict. Like romance, like it's the stuff that you put in the areas where you need to shore up. Like it's where you get a lot of conflict in the early part of the book. I feel like, you know, I think sometimes people use romance as a pause to the conflict, but I don't know, like it can be so like it can be a lot of conflict.
Depends on the kind of book you're writing, yeah.
I mean, enemies to lovers is like one of the favorite tropes for a reason. You know, people love that. The push and pull of the romance and whatever the external conflict is too.
Yeah. Good, positive love. That's for real life.
Roman is
dirty,
a fight,
messy love is better
scene.
for books.
And a quick question to all of you. Have you ever regret not using a character you invented? Cool question from the community.
I've killed way too many people that I regret. I really could have used them later.
Jennifer, you look like you're about to speak.
Yeah. I do regret, you know, like Holly said, killing off some of the characters, like Fletcher in my Elemental Assassin series, because he's such an integral part of the story, even though he's dead. And I kind of wonder like what I could have done with him if, you know, he had survived past the first part of book one. So, and then also as I've gone along, you know, there have been some villains where, you know, you think that you're going to kill the villain at the end of the book. And some of them just turn out to be so fascinating that I decide not to kill them. And I think that kind of works out better in some cases because there's more story to tell with the villains too sometimes.
Yeah, I have a tendency to kill characters that are too helpful, because, you know, like when you have a character who like knows all the answers or can give good advice or like can solve a problem for your heroes, that's a problem because you want your heroes to solve their own problems. You want them to struggle with, you know, and find their own wisdom. You don't want to just hand it to them. And so I have a tendency to kill off the characters who would be most helpful to my main characters so that they can struggle more. But sometimes it does mean like killing someone that I really loved. There's this one character, Bruna from the original, my first book, who I loved so much. She was this 100-plus-year-old healer who like lived in a hut outside of the village and didn't get along with anyone, and she was mean, but she was also brilliant, and like everyone depended on her, and she like when she was on your side it was the safest place in the world. And I loved writing her, but I also felt like in order for my character who was her protege to grow, I needed to remove her ability to like give all the answers. And so over the years that's the one character that I think I've most regretted killing. But she was over 100. I mean, like, come on. she had a good life.
She had a good life. She did her job. So we are going to play a little game now together. I think you have, we called it quick, quirky questions. It's a silly name you shouldn't use in one of your books. And I think you prepared something, right? Do you have it with you? Like, I can show you like this, where I will ask you questions and then we will write it down together. Are you ready? Okay, great. Yep. So, yeah, Peter, sometimes it goes to another universe when we talk it to you. So you have, then the answer you have to really to show it in front of your face. But
yeah,
we can make it.
I'll make sure that I'll figure it out. There we go. It's just
okay. So,
how close or far.
So, very first question is, what's your favorite underrated book? Are we ready? Or still writing?
Still writing.
Okay. 1. Peter's still writing. Holly's ready?
It's a long book title.
It's a big title. Okay. So I'm sure you will know mine. So yeah, Jennifer, start, please. Oh, we show it together. 1, 2, 3. So.
Oh no! How did you do? Wait, I've done something terrible.
Okay, Sword.
Yes. No, hold on. There we go. What? This is trickier than I expected.
I have really bad eyes. You have to tell me. Holly, start with your book.
How does everyone else's look right? Does mine look right to you?
Yeah.
Sword?
Oh, okay. To me, it looks backwards. It's Swords Point by Ellen Kushner. It is a book of manners. It has a great deal of dueling and no magic, despite being a fantasy novel, and is, to my mind, a perfect book.
Peter, what is your choice of a most underrated
I put
book?
In there, Black Sun Rising by C.S. Friedman, Celia Friedman.
Yeah.
Celia Friedman is a favorite author of mine. Her books are a masterclass in world building and like sympathetic villains and flawed heroes. And I learned so much from reading those books. So Black Sun Rising is the first book in her Cold Fire trilogy that I wish everybody would read them, because I feel like I learned so much as a writer from reading them, and I also enjoyed them so much as a reader. And I don't think she gets a fraction of the credit that she deserves.
And cool. And Jennifer, what is your choice and why?
I chose Beauty by Robin McKinley. It is a retelling of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale. So it's a story that we all know that's been told, 1,000 different ways. But, Robin McKinley's writing, it's very simple, but it's just so lush and elegant at the same time. It's one of my all-time favorite books.
Cool. And yeah, really quick. Mine is, it's a very German title. It's called Wunschpunsch by Michael Ende. And yeah, it's actually, I think, more a child book, but it's where at the end of, before New Year's Eve, there's going to be like a big, huge spell and the whole world is going to end. And all the animals, which are the assistants and also spies of the big magician, they can talk to each other and they try to save the world. So actually, I like it very much because it's a very cool kids fantasy book, and yeah, and I think it's much underrated. Okay, next question. We have to wash this really quick. And what was your hardest scene to write? That's easy for me. Okay. Everyone is writing. Who is the first? Okay, Holly is still writing.
And
For me, it's actually comedy, but you have really great scenes. So yeah, we start again with Holly.
I don't know that I did this right.
I think I did it wrong too.
I did a very specific scene that I found.
No, you're right. No, it's perfect
same
because perfect. That actually was the question, but I have never wrote any kind of scene, so I actually could have skipped this. So Holly, what was your hardest scene to write?
There's a part of the Folk of the Air series where Jude, our protagonist, has to decide whether or not to cut off Snake's head. And I needed to make this feel not like an easy choice, but like an act, like a sacrifice on her part to do it. And it meant a lot of back building in terms of what stories we understood and what pieces I needed to put in place. So it wasn't something that was hard to write because it was hard to write the scene. It was hard to write the scene, and it was hard because I had to go back through the whole book again and again and again to make sure she was in the exact right emotional place for it to seem like a hard thing to the reader and not an easy choice for a character who was already kind of murder happy.
Murder happy.
That's why she's such a great heroine.
So, Jennifer, what was your hardest scene to write?
All right, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but
Don't worry.
in Dark Frost, my third Mythos Academy book, Knot is a Fenrir wolf that my heroine Gwen Frost kind of takes care of, and Knot basically sacrifices herself to save Gwen. And, you know, kind of conventional wisdom in books is never to kill off like any sort of animal or beloved pet or anything like that. So that was a hard scene for me to write. Kind of just wondering what readers would think about it. And, you know, also so many of us have lost beloved pets over the years. And it reminded me of, you know, this dog that I had that when I was a kid, we had him for 19 years, and it was really emotional for me when we had to put him to sleep. So that to me was a really tough scene to write.
Very emotional scene, I can understand. And Peter, last but not least, your hardest scene.
So so this, it says Leisha's Lie in the Skull Throne. And so basically, in my fourth novel, The Skull Throne, one of the main characters, Leisha Paper, is pregnant. And if the father were known, the child would be in some danger. And so the plot that I had designed called for her to lie about who the father was. And so there's this emotional scene with the man that she's in a relationship with, who's not the father, where she was going to lie about who the father was. And as I sat down to write that scene, basically the character turned to me and said, I'm not going to do that. That's not who I am. That's not the kind of person I am. I wouldn't do that. And so I had her blurt out the truth instead. And then I had to go and pull plot threads from the whole rest of the book and rewrite them to now accommodate the fact that she had told the truth rather than telling a lie. But it was one of those moments as an author, and they don't come very often for me, but they do happen, where you've created a plot and then you get to know your character better. And by the time it comes for them to follow a certain plot point, they're just like, nope, not going to do that. That's not me. And if you make me do that, the readers are going to know that I'm acting out of character. And so that was tough for me because it was a lot of work to fix it. But I think the story was better for it.
Great. So next question: what is personally the hardest or the best or your favorite book villain? Who's your favorite book villain of all times and why?
So not from our books, from other books?
From all over. If it's yours, you can write that too.
This would be hard.
Silence. Peter is sweating.
What's that? You ready?
Cool. Okay, ready.
I'm ready.
1, 2, 3. Holly is ready too. Jennifer is writing. It's a long name.
Yep. Well, I did too.
Oh, you're awesome. You already wrote the why. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Holly, go first.
So I decided I was going to put down the Corinthian from Sandman, who has teeth in his eyes. I had read those books, or the series, at a time when I had been coming from almost entirely being a reader of high fantasy, and I'm not entirely sure that I was prepared for the level of horror that I was finding. But there's something about the idea of hunger in a villain, of somebody who is incomprehensible in terms of, like, you constantly feel that moment of, like, I understand this character. This character is, in some way relatable, and then having that always swept away from you, that I come back to as being a thing I really love in villains. The moment where we are constantly brought in and lured in to believe that we can understand them, and then we get that moment of dissonance where we realize, no, there is a division between you and this kind of creature, that is what villainy is.
And Peter?
So I doubled down on C.S. Friedman with Gerald Taurant is the main villain in the Cold Fire trilogy that I had mentioned before. And what I love about him is he is, in many ways, like, irredeemably evil. This is a person who killed his entire family in a dark magic ritual to give himself eternal life, and has sold his soul multiple times to multiple demons, and has lived for hundreds of years preying on people as sort of like an emotional vampire. But the series is about his redemption. And in the beginning, you can't imagine rooting for someone who's so unspeakably evil. But as the series goes on, and as you get to know him and become charmed by him, but also invested in his path to redemption, you end up rooting for him. And the fact that the writer was able to make me start rooting for somebody that was that evil, just was a masterwork to me. And so I really cannot recommend it highly enough.
That sounds like a really mean guy. And Jennifer, your favorite villain, and why?
Well, I did two. I did one from my book. So Maven from Kill the Queen. Like I was talking about earlier, she's just one of those villains who came onto the page, and I just liked her so much that I just couldn't get rid of her, because she's always so cold and calculating and always thinking about her next move. So that's why I love her. And then in other people's books, I picked Blofeld from the James Bond series by Ian Fleming, both the books and the movies, just because he's kind of like the Michael Myers of the spy world. He just never seems to die, and he just keeps coming back, book after book and movie after movie, because he's just so fascinating and in so many ways basically a mirror image of James Bond. And I always find it really fascinating when the villain is so similar to the hero. I think that creates a lot of conflict and drama and a lot of good push and pull in the story.
Even James Bond made it. Yeah, minus Sauron, because that guy gave me nightmares, and then I said, okay, if you start being in my dreams, you deserve the first prize. So the next question is, what's the weirdest thing you had to Google or had to go for book research? The weirdest place or the weirdest thing you had to Google for your book? Oh, you ready? Yeah, Jennifer, now you start. So mix it up a little.
Okay.
Oh, no, we
so
start,
this is
we
something...
just follow again, yeah. So
Oh, wait, we go up.
Okay, very good. Bees? Okay, Jennifer, you start, but I'm really curious about this answer. So, yeah, Jennifer, what is your answer and why?
Okay, this is actually something that I had to look up the other day. How tall are maple trees? And this is for an epic fantasy book. And I have a scene where my heroine is using her magic to basically tear this tree out of this hill. And I started thinking, like, how tall do maple trees actually get? And it was like this weird, like, rabbit hole that I went down. But I find Peter's really interesting because my grandfather actually used to keep bees. So I know a lot about bees.
Very good. And Peter, you have bees too?
What?
What is your answer?
So I put down bees because the demons in my books work out of hives, and there's a lot of fascinating things that happen in a beehive, like when the queen dies. So you know, at the end of the series, the whole point is to go and kill the queen, and then what happens afterward is sort of like very telling for how the series is going to go on after that. And so I just thought I would Google it for 10 minutes, and I ended up spending like a week researching like bees and wasps and like other hive insects and like how they reproduce and like how like I would want to apply that to like the way the demons operate and like what I can change and what I can keep and like what's really cool that almost sounds like it's fantasy, but it's actually real life. And so I ended up going down a deep wormhole like that. Although in general, an author's search history is not that different from a serial killer's or, you know, like a sociopath's search history.
Very cool. Holly, now your turn.
So this is the thing I did. So I was writing this magical mobster series, and at some point, the main character, Castle, gets put in the trunk of the car of an FBI agent. And I was trying to describe it, and I wasn't really sure what it would be like. And so during that pre-pandemic time, I would write out a lot, and I was writing with my friend Kelly Link, and she had to do some errands. And I said, okay, but would you put me in the trunk of your car? And, you know, she was like, sure, get in. But the thing is, when you're imagining this, you're imagining like a big old Lincoln Town car, but she had like a hatchback. So people could clearly see that she had put someone in the trunk of her car. But Massachusetts is a lawless land, and nobody came to help me. What I learned is...
That's kind of depressing.
It's not so uncomfortable. It's not so bad. You could use a neck pillow, but otherwise, not so bad in a car.
Very cool. Sorry. So yeah,
Did you try to escape from the trunk yourself?
I didn't.
So yeah, like I had to call a prostitute for research for comedy. My boss told me. It sounds stupid, but yeah. Yeah, I had to write this sketch scene with a prostitute. And then my boss told me, hey, please first research. And I had to research. It was not my computer, but it was his computer. And then I had to call her up and ask
that in your computer.
Really, yeah, it was not my computer. But then, yeah, I had to call her and made really stupid questions. And after 3 days, the wife of my boss called and said if it's true that I had to Google a prostitute. So it backfired on him. So really cool questions are coming in. So that's a nice question. What is your favorite snack while writing a book?
Coffee.
Oh, you're ready. 1, 2, 3. Go. Nuts.
I forgot we were.
Holly is only drinking coffee? Holly is only drinking coffee?
Snack.
It is a snack. Is it black coffee?
There's some milk in it.
Wait, I heard I drink only black coffee, and I heard only sociopath drink black coffee.
Not gonna argue with that.
Peter, what is your favorite snack? It's a cool question from
I chose something very divisive because it's almost Halloween. I get very excited when candy corn goes back on sale in the fall every year. It is a very divisive subject here in the United States over whether you love it or whether you hate it. But I maybe it's just my childhood fascination with it. But it is a waxy, honey flavored sugar candy that's basically eating pure sugar. And I will eat it constantly while I'm writing. I don't even notice I'm doing it. It's a wonder that I am in relatively good health. But I tend to eat sugary junk while I'm writing, sort of instinctively.
Jenny, what's your favorite snack or guilty pleasure?
I said gummy bears. I too am a sugar fiend. I love them, and it's like the more sugar I eat, the faster I can write. So it works out pretty well.
We should.
I also write late at night, so
sugar is always good. Sugar helps. Yeah, we should send you the original Haribo from Germany. And yeah, mine are nuts. Go nuts. Just go nuts. And what's your last book you read and when? Okay. Are we ready? Holly is still writing.
I'm ready.
Okay, ready. Okay. So Peter starts Project Hail Mary. What is your last book,
Andy
Peter?
Weir. Project Hail Mary is written by Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian. It just came out pretty recently. I listened to it as an audiobook rather than read it as a paper book, but I absolutely loved it. It has all of the same things that made The Martian such an amazing story. Incredibly high stakes, one person trapped alone in space trying to do science to get themselves out of an enormous problem with incredibly high stakes. It's tense throughout. I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite books recently.
I think the favorite quote of The Martian is, I will
science the shit out of this?
Yeah, it's science the shit out of this. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in this book too, which is why I loved it so much.
Jennifer.
I never thought that listening to a main character frantically do math would be that compelling, but it's actually very compelling.
So my most recent book was Orphan X by Greg Hurwitz. As I said before, I'm a big James Bond fan, and Orphan X has a lot of it's very Bondian in a way. It's about this guy. He was trained basically to be a government assassin, but he kind of goes out on his own and he helps people, and it kind of like backfires on him. And a lot of good action and adventure in the story, and it was just a really fun read.
Holly? What
So
was
mine
your last
was,
book?
Naomi Novik's Last Graduate, which is the second book in her Scholomance series. I read it last week. My a friend of mine, Gavin, had just read it and had asked me if I read it, and because he wanted to talk about it, so I had to go home and quickly read it. I had it waiting for me, and it's about it's set in a world where when people who can use magic are young, there are these creatures who will eat them for their power, and it's very hard to keep those creatures away. And so if they're lucky, they get to go to this school in which there are fewer creatures, but they are constantly in danger of being eaten. And so it is a hellish landscape. And in book 2, which I thought was a duology, but clearly is not. Lots of things happen. And many circumstances of the world change. So I was very excited to see, always interested when people make big moves in books, that, you know, they build a world and then they decide they're going to massively change their world in their books, is always such a pleasure.
Naomi is amazing. All of her books are fantastic, including this new series.
So guys, I won't tell it because it's one of the book of this festival, but I will actually read all of your books. And yeah, we're coming to the end. A really quick questions to all of you from the audience. Which book, you cannot answer without the thingy, which book was it that made you write fantasy? Do you have one?
I mean, the first book that I ever read, like the first book that I read of my own volition that was not for school and didn't have pictures in it, was The Hobbit. And so I always kind of felt like that set the tone for my life. There have been a lot of other books that like significantly affected me, but I think that one was I always wondered if I had read Sherlock Holmes or James Bond or something instead, if my life would have been entirely different. So even though it's a trite answer, I'm going to go with The Hobbit.
The Hobbit. And Holly, what was your first fantasy book that made you write?
So it's a tough question, but the book I think I'm going to go with is an illustrated book of folklore, which is Fairies by Brian Froud and Alan Lee. And if you have never seen it, it is gorgeous. Brian Froud did concept art for Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. And Alan Lee did concept art for Lord of the Rings. So imagine them together in a small English town in the 70s, painting really weird and scary fairies. And that is always imprinted on me of what fairies are. And I think it's the thing that made me go off and read more folklore, and probably the thing I owe my entire career to.
I really love Brian Froud. Do you have Lady Coddington's Pressed Fairy Journal?
Yeah.
I love that book so much.
Jenny, what fantasy book made you want to write?
I am going to pick The Diamond Throne by David Eddings, which is the first book in his Millennium trilogy. And I remember that's one of the very first epic fantasy books that I picked up way back in high school. And I just loved it so much because it had everything that I love to read about in a book. It had action, adventure, and danger. And there's even a little romance in it for an epic fantasy book. So that's still one of my all-time favorite series.
Guys, thank you very, very much.
Before we finish, can we do one thing quickly?
Please.
We were all talking in the green room before we started about the length of our books. Could you turn all the books sideways so we can compare them?
I can actually say there's a little trick with it. Good question, Peter. And wait a second.
Okay. To be fair, the book that is there is an illustrated book, but my normal book is a normal size.
That's like a little spin-off. Peter knew it. Yeah.
It is illustrated.
It's so cute. It's such a cute little book.
It's a novella.
Well, sometimes you have to learn to be quick and, you know.
Concise.
Concise, yeah.
Concise.
Gaming.
Guys, I hope...
Those books are the same size, too, those other books.
Wait a second, I can...
No, I think Peter's is probably longer than mine.
Turn them so the spines are facing out, and then so we can...
Pens. Okay, Peter, you have 1005 because you say thank you at the end.
Yeah, that's why.
And
yeah, his is longer than mine.
Yeah. You have
the last
no
200 pages are just thank you.
Yeah, it's a little bit smaller.
Yeah, no, yeah, they're comparable. That's fair.
Somebody once told me that with the German translation, it makes all the English books at least 20% longer. I thought that was really fascinating with all the German compound words.
Yeah, that's why. Actually, Peter's normal books are only 300, but in Germany, we don't. We talk a lot and try to explain a lot. So actually,
well, yeah, in English it's 640. So,
oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow,
that's a long book.
It's more than 20%. So guys, thank you very much. I hope you are going to come to Germany one day. Big applause. Thanks for being with us and to play this really fun game. Yeah, stay safe and hope to see you soon in Germany.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. Wow, sehr witziges Trio. Nochmals vielen, vielen Dank für eure fantastischen Fragen. Jetzt geht es nämlich weiter mit Naomi Novik, aber ich gehe jetzt erstmal rum. So. Und ihr habt, wie gesagt, die Möglichkeit, bei dem Gewinnspiel mitzumachen bis heute Abend um 23:59 Uhr. Eine Minute später geht es leider nicht mehr. Und wie gesagt, einfach bei den Videos von gestern und vorgestern beim Festival einfach einen Kommentar da lassen, auf Instagram, auf IGTV, auf YouTube. Und dann macht ihr automatisch beim Gewinnspiel mit und könnt die Bücher gewinnen, die an dem jeweiligen Tag die Autoren sozusagen mitgebracht haben. Und einige sind sogar signiert. So, und jetzt ganz groß da. Und wie gesagt, jetzt im Chat einfach eure Fragen stellen, denn please welcome Naomi Novik. Is she there? Ist sie schon da?
Hi.
Ah, here you are. Hello, Naomi.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
for being with us. I hope you didn't have to wait too much. You know, the other couple.
No.
We're talking all the time. So, Naomi, your book is called, I hope I pronounce it right, Scholomance?
Yes, very well.
I had to practice all day. Everybody, Scholomance. And it is not school and romance, right?
No.
What is it about?
So the Scholomance is actually an old folk legend. It's briefly mentioned in Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it is a legend of a school where people would go. It's a sort of medieval era legend, I think. And the idea is that people would go there, sorcerers would go there to study the dark arts, and there would be 10 students. And they would spend a long time in this school locked up studying. And when they left, the way they paid for their schooling was the last one out the door, the last graduate, was taken by the devil, and their soul paid for the schooling of all the others. And so that was one of the many inspirations, one of the many seeds that come into this book.
So, is it fair to say, how much did you hate school when you were young?
You know, I'm trying to think, you know, I liked studying. And I liked, my teachers were always slightly frustrated with me because I would come to school and I'd sit in the front row like a good little nerd. But I'd be sitting like this with a book. And so the teacher would be looking at me in the front row as I ignored them and read whatever book I was reading under the table. And I don't know why, when this was when I was younger. So I think it was that weird child sense, which, where you're like, if I can't see them, they can't see me. But of course they could see me.
Yeah, because I still have nightmares of math that I still wake up and think, oh, damn, I didn't learn for the test today. So school is a very cool setting. And questions are coming in from the community. A lot of your books are based on legends and fairy tales. What is your favorite legend?
Oh, I don't have a single one. The thing that I like the most about a legend or a fairy tale is when I feel like it has connections to other stories for me, or where it leaves me with questions. So, for instance, with the Scholomance, right, one of the very obvious connections, right, is with Harry Potter. Because of course in Harry Potter, Hogwarts is this enormously important place, this idea of wizard schooling. And it's this sort of, and there it's an experience of wonder, of delight, right? But so on the other hand, you have this legend of the Scholomance, which is this horrifying, literally soul destroying place. And so the pleasure for me is taking different stories and trying to connect them together in unpredictable ways.
Because instead of Hogwarts, where everything is magical, in Scholomance, actually the school tries to kill you. So there are monsters everywhere, and it's a very scary place. And no teachers, right?
No teachers, that's right. That's one of those elements of the story. When I build a world or a fantasy universe, I don't build it first and then write the story. The world gets built as I go. So initially I thought there might be teachers in the school, but as I kept going and I realized, so one of the fundamental questions that I have to answer in this book is why does anybody come to this horrible school? And the answer is that it's better in the school than on the outside. However horrible it is inside the school, it's better because there are fewer monsters. And so, sorry, I will use my visual aid because we have these amazing blueprints of the school that you can see. And so the idea is there's this tiny bottleneck, and the only way in and out of the school is down at the bottom. And so the students stay up here. And what that means is that the students don't leave for all 4 years. They come in, they stay for 4 years, and then there's one time when they get out the doors and they run out the doors. And so because of that, it meant, what teacher in their right mind would come here? They can't leave. So the only reason children come is because it's so much safer for them than on the outside.
So someone in the community is asking, which of your books should one start with?
My books should one, that's like, which of your children is your favorite? I always find that the book that I'm most interested in is the one that I've just finished. Which in this case, actually, you can't start with because it's the third book in this trilogy and it's not published yet. I've just finished writing it. And I do think that my books are quite diverse. They take place in different times. They have different moods. The Temeraire series, which is the first series that I wrote, is a very sort of realistic fantasy. It's set in the Napoleonic Wars, and it's very grounded in the historical Napoleonic Wars. And the dragons are not magical. It's basically Napoleonic Wars, but with dragons as an air force. And the dragons are meant to feel realistic. So I try to keep to the historical detail as much as possible. Then Uprooted and Spinning Silver are very much connected to sort of Eastern European fairy tales and history and family history, my own family history. It's sort of about the stories that my parents told me growing up, which a sort of combination of fairy tales and personal stories of their lives, essentially during World War II and afterwards. So those stories, and those stories connect sort of very clearly to specific fairy tales. Uprooted is very connected to several different Polish fairy tales that are not very well known, but also to Beauty and the Beast. Spinning Silver is very closely connected to Rumpelstiltskin. They're not retellings of them, but they're conversations with those stories. And then the Scholomance is, as I've sort of been describing, it's this conversation between this old folk legend and the sort of broader legend of magic schools for which you pay a terrible price, along with the magic boarding school trope, which is much more modern. And obviously Harry Potter is the most famous example of it. And so the thing that's in common, the thread that I think runs through all of my work is that it's all about having conversations. You know, it's all about, what if I took these two things that people don't think go together and put them together? And bringing in lots of different elements and sort of trying to find something new. So maybe that helps someone.
Like you said, you don't have a favorite child. And one fan wants to know, how did you actually come up with the idea of the various dragon races in the Napoleon Wars? And how did you research? Because it's quite, the historic parts are real. Yeah,
you know, I'm actually particularly interested in the Napoleonic Wars. I think I read my first, you know, very, very hagiographic biography of Napoleon when I was about 10 years old, just in the school library. And I just like it. I love reading about that, reading about the Age of Sail. The different kinds of dragons, there are two different ways, really. One way, for instance, when I came up with the first set of dragons who were based in England, essentially, was that I was inspired by butterfly species, butterfly and bird species. So what I would do is I would search for images of butterflies and look at the colors and the names and the patterns, because I wanted that sense of sort of very diverse looking species, you know, that it had that sense of sort of an ecological diversity in a way. I researched, you know, for the biology of the dragons. I mean, it's of course, it doesn't really work if you look at it too closely. There would have to be a lot more cows in the world to feed the dragons. But the dragons, I sort of physically tried to base them on the current research on dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. So for instance, what they think about the weight of a Tyrannosaurus, what they think about the speed of pterodactyls and pteranodons, that kind of paleontological research. I tried to be inspired by that, to try and keep the dragons sort of feeling like physically constrained enough. You know, for instance, if you read Tolkien, right, you read stories about Ancalagon the Black, who is literally like the size of a mountain range. And that, to me, that's something that can only exist in a fantasy universe. That scale, it's not that it couldn't exist in some sense. It's that for us imagining it, we can't really interact with a creature on that physical scale. Whereas, you know, I was sort of channeling going to the Museum of Natural History in New York when I was a child and seeing the skeleton of the Tyrannosaurus, and that sense of, you know, being dwarfed and yet not so dwarfed that I couldn't imagine. I mean, obviously you wouldn't really talk to a Tyrannosaurus for very long if you've been but the sense of an interaction, a sort of relationship possible.
Yeah, it's always amazing. I always thought when I was a little child that maybe dragons are real because they are only like dinosaurs, which were found by old Greek, then see this big Tyrannosaurus and then think, oh, let's make up some stories. Naomi, we want to play a little game with you. We want to draw your next monster together. I will draw, and you will tell me what I have to do. And maybe it's that horrible that it's going to be in your next in your next book. Who knows?
Excellent.
So, you guys who are watching, keep writing your questions, and then help me to find the name. Also am Ende auch den Namen für das Monster, was ich jetzt aufzeichnen werde. So, Naomi, come with me. We have our magical forest here in Germany. Have you ever been to Germany?
No, sadly, I have not. In fact, I have a good friend who's from Munich, and we have a deal that we're going to go over together with our kids someday and visit Germany with her and Poland with my daughter, and we will trade because I don't sadly speak German. But she does. So I have plans.
Yeah, you have to come because Rumpelstiltskin is a German story, and there's a lot of things you will have for many other books. So how we start with the feet? What do you want me feet? Do you want claws? What should I draw?
Let's think about this. All right. So
I'm really bad. So.
All right,
so
that's
don't
fine.
Worry, okay?
That's fine. You know, when I draw, it's like little stick figures. All right, so I think let's start with like a sort of a splayed hand, sort of like a chicken.
Okay,
chicken hand or like a raptor hand. Yeah, chicken. Actually, chicken. Yeah, I'm sort of feeling a Baba Yaga vibe, right?
Is this like a chicken?
I think it's more like a duck, but that's okay. We can work with that.
Duck. Okay, this is duck, and then wait a second. I like
actually
this.
no. Don't go with that aquatic feeling, right? I like the aquatic feeling. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's run with that.
You can have this and that. Well, that side, the other feet. So okay, let's do this. Aquatic feet.
All right. So I feel like those are
knees.
Yeah, I feel like I see something paddling here, right?
Yeah.
I like the idea of something that like the way a crocodile's eyes are the only part that come above the surface.
Oh.
I like the idea of some creature that's sort of moving around beneath the surface and only its eyes, or only some kind of antenna or something coming up above the surface of the water.
Okay.
Do you want to go to the top?
So we start with it now at the top?
Yeah, why not? Let's go for it.
So you want antennas like a snail?
All right, let's go for it. Let's try it. Why not?
Wait a second.
It could be like a periscope that it can pop its eyes up a little bit.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, like this, maybe?
Sure.
And the eyes like cats, maybe?
Yes, I'm for that. That always looks sort of vaguely creepy, right?
Okay, that's good. So now I know how to start to draw a monster. First the feet, then the eyes. Okay.
Right. There we go. No, I think obviously the mouth is quite key for monsters, right?
Of course.
The mouth has to give some. I'm feeling like I see a long sort of slitted mouth with lots of teeth.
A lot of teeth.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of teeth.
Like a wide, narrow mouth.
Narrow?
Yeah, narrow. I feel like something. Yeah.
Or more, or bigger.
Bigger. Let's keep going. All right. Oh, actually, I like that. I like the sort of slanted mouth. I feel it's like I like the asymmetry. There we go. All right. Yeah. Because asymmetry always looks sort of strange to us.
Yeah.
We don't expect asymmetry. Then yeah. All right. I feel like so this obviously has
a bit of blood.
Excellent. I like the atmosphere we're creating.
Yeah, blood, feet. You can't swim. Face, maybe fluffy. Is fluffy good? Fluffy, or that's not too dangerous? That's not dangerous.
I don't know. It depends on fluffy. I think of as like sheep, which doesn't really work with water.
Okay.
Maybe But we have to think about where the head is versus the body, I guess. So draw where you think the head would be. Like draw the outline of the head now.
I would say like this.
All right. That works.
Yeah, that works. Maybe like a little, maybe he has hair.
That looks like plants. Hair that, like a surface, so it can sort of camouflage itself underwater. So
okay.
Plants are...
Oh, plants are good.
Right?
Maybe a little flower. Plants.
All right. Let's see.
I'm scared already.
Yeah, it's pretty creepy.
Are names coming in? I don't know.
I feel like so maybe the body probably kind of bulbous, maybe translucent.
Translucent?
Yes.
Yeah, I can draw this.
Let's draw that. Yeah. You can see bones inside it being digested. Yes, like living creatures inside being digested.
That's I didn't listen in biology, so maybe like this.
All right.
Does this look like? And he's
that definitely. Mm-hmm.
Does this look?
Yeah, that works for me. I feel like we've got some creepiness going here.
The cameraman is like, okay, I can see this.
Right.
Is that very okay? Do you actually have? And what does it have wings or something?
I feel like wings seems wrong.
Yeah.
What would be something interesting? Maybe a tail. Maybe like a prehensile tail of some kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tail, or maybe, tail, or maybe fins.
Fins, okay. Fins. I can do fins like they actually look like the hands.
There we go.
I really hope that's going to be in the next book because this is a masterpiece. So.
I cannot wait to see what names people come up with for this guy.
Yeah, me too.
Yes.
So, it's translucent, of course. The bones are here. And the fin, yeah.
Yeah.
Scary.
Yes.
Bit fishy. I think it's more fishy.
Yes. Yes,
yeah.
like scaly fish.
Big eyes. A flower, of course, too.
Yep.
So people, it doesn't give away that's a monster. Okay. What else?
You know what? Actually, maybe the eyes also should be a little disguised, like almost have like some kind of growth, like plants or something growing on top of the eyes. So that the eyes can sort of, just continue this idea. And it's sort of thing that's.
It look nice.
Yeah.
But it's, of course.
Excellent.
Like this?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's, Naomi, thank you very much. Let's take a look what the people is. Great names. So, the name are thing. You can decide, of course, of this character. The monster names are Ellen, Kurt, Mr. Bloom, Spencer, Herbert, it's a very German name, Bruggletop.
What does that mean something?
Herbert? Herbert? No, it's just a German name.
No, the next one after that.
Bruggletop. Bruggletop.
Bruggletop.
Then Oktoberkurt. Otimot. Cool names. Quackduck.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound very scary. Oh, Duckgoyle. That's not bad. Laranka. Oh, that sounds like Laranka. Quaxon, Dread Duck, Dust Duck, Quakinkte, Frog Duck, Gozilla, Slock, Water Hunter, Snuck, it's a mixture of snail duck, Jump Eater, Guabla, Snarkraptor, or Fret. So
I feel like
you have
Bruttletop is sort of winning for me.
Braggletop. Okay, I write this down.
Yes, I don't know how it's spelled.
Yeah,
so.
I will write it down. Braggletop. It is B. Braggletop. Someone at home is very happy that it is.
Yeah.
My head, now you see my handwriting is really bad, but it is Braggletop.
But your artistic skills are magnificent.
Yeah, we will send you this.
Excellent.
And we hope it will never make history.
I don't know. I feel like Braggletop might need to be in a story. Braggletop might appear.
Yeah, I have the feeling if it's let's go back to our book. I have the feeling that if it's ever going to make your Scholomance book, Braggletop will die in the first scene because the monsters have to die, right?
Well, the monsters very often do. Well, either if the monster appeared in a scene and didn't die, either it ran away or. But obviously the scenes where the monsters win are the ones where there's nobody left afterwards to tell the tale. So I think the monsters win a lot, but that would be a short book, right? Otherwise.
So Braggletop has the chance of being alive for quite a bit. People are asking, how did you get into writing? I know that's a tough question, but is there?
No, it's actually, for me, it's a very easy question. I started writing fan fiction for fun. I was in college, I think my sophomore year of college. I started writing Star Trek fan fiction. And I wrote fan fiction as a hobby while I studied computer science. And I did that for about 10 years. And then, in fact, I sort of switched, and now I code for fun, and I write professionally. So that's my story.
So did some of your fan fiction actually made it in a book, or was it like a source for later stories, or is it just another?
It's funny because I've written a ton of fan fiction, and every once in a while I write a story that I'm really happy with, and I'm like, oh, I should file off the serial numbers. And it doesn't work that way for me. Once I've written a story, if I write a fanfic story, for me, that's something that, I talked about conversations, right? When I write a fan fiction story, for me, that's like going out to dinner one-on-one with another person, and your conversation is so dependent on all your mutual background and everything you share with one another that you can't sort of say, and now I'm going to go have this conversation with somebody else. That's what it would be like, right? I'm going to have the same conversation, but with somebody, you're like, but it doesn't work. That's the conversation that I had with that person. So for me, that's what fan fiction is. It's so closely connected to the original source. But when I have ideas that are that don't want to be that closely connected, when I have ideas that, I want to take something as far apart, and really kind of take it in my own direction. And I'm far enough away that it's not really that intimately connected. It's like a party, right? It's a dinner party, and you have like 5 or 6 people at the table, and you're having a conversation that each person is contributing to. That's what, in a way, the difference for me is. That's professional fiction when it's something that feels like sufficiently original and sufficiently it's sort of me, that it's not fan fiction. So my fan fiction, obviously the fan fiction that I've written some Sherlock Holmes fan fiction. It's out of copyright, so it can be published commercially. But that's just that's sort of copyright. That's not about what it is as art.
So Naomi, thank you very much for drawing Braggletop with us. And can you quickly, there's actually a question from the community, tell us when your third book is coming out, and maybe you have a little message to all your German fans.
So just a message of thank you so much. I'm so happy that you guys have taken my books to your heart. It's a magical thing as an author to be translated. It means that another artist, because I do think translation is an art, and another artist has transformed your work in order to share it with other people who you yourself cannot speak with. So in a way, it's like my books get to speak to people and for me to people. So Scholomance, the first book, Deadly Education, I think is just out now. The second book, The Last Graduate, was just published here in the US, and I'm not sure when it's being published in Germany, but hopefully pretty soon. And book 3 is not finished yet. I am in revisions. It will be published, I believe currently the plan is in fall, in English, it'll be published in fall of next year. So, but I don't, first I have to finish it, so I can't promise.
Okay, so maybe Braggletop, our monster, has a chance to be. Has a chance. Naomi, thank you very much for being with us, and I hope we can see you in Germany one day. You're very invited, maybe in our next festival, finally to be here. I
hope so.
Invited.
I hope so.
Thank you very much, Naomi.
Thank you all.
Bye. Ja, wir tauschen hier kurz die Bücher aus und nochmals als Hinweis, ihr habt die Möglichkeit, bei unserem Gewinnspiel mitzumachen. Also einfach nach der Live-Show einfach warten. Auf Instagram, auf IGTV und auf YouTube kommt dieses Video online. Und es gibt natürlich die Videos von gestern und vorgestern. Und da könnt ihr einfach einen Kommentar hinterlassen und macht automatisch beim Gewinnspiel mit. Bis heute Abend um 23:59 Uhr, denn morgen werden schon die Gewinner direkt ermittelt und benachrichtigt. Also es lohnt sich auf jeden Fall nochmals bei den anderen Clips vorbeizuschauen und einen Kommentar zu hinterlassen. Wie fandet ihr Braggletop, das Monster, was wir gerade gezeichnet haben? Oder was war euer Lieblings-Fantasy-Buch oder euer Lieblingsautor? Und jetzt kommen wir zu unserem großen Finale, nämlich zu Kevin Hearne und Benedict Jacka. Sind die schon da? Are you there, guys?
Hello. Hello.
Hello, everybody. You are online. How are you guys? Where are you right now? Kevin, where are you?
I'm in Ottawa, Canada.
And I'm in London.
In London. Very good. Yeah, guys, great that you're here. And we speak, Kevin, about your book. Have you ever seen it, the German title?
I'm not sure which book we're talking about.
We're talking about, in German it's Das Spiel des Baden. The original title is A Plague of Giants.
Yes, I have seen that. I got one copy, I think, and I was trying desperately to find it. And before this, and I failed. I have it somewhere, but yes, I have seen that before. It's they did a slightly different take on the cover from the US edition, and it's great.
So that version is okay for you. What's the difference between this and the American? Do you remember?
The background has some stuff in it that is not on the US cover, and they've done like a different filter to the photograph. And that's about the only difference besides, the title itself. And I know that the sequel is coming out soon. It's already out in English, but I know that the translation is going to be coming out soon. in Germany. So I'm looking forward to seeing that as well.
So without spoiling too much, can you tell us what's happening in this book?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Basically, what you have is a continent that's been at peace for quite some time and is suddenly invaded from two different coasts by two different races of giants. And they are both intending in their own way to colonize. And so this peaceful nation, or actually 5 nations, needs to figure out how are we going to defend ourselves against this incredible threat. And to make sure that we actually see perspectives from all over the continent, the point of view jumps around. There are actually 11 different points of view in the book. And these are not all kings or warriors or things like that. You have regular folks who are affected by war too. When war comes to your country, it's a big deal for everyone. And everyone's, has different conflicts that they have to work through. So there is a bard who tells the story of these different people, and therefore the story of the war, to a sea of refugees outside of a city wall. So it deals with a lot of different aspects of war besides just the battles. And I was inspired to do that because of the old epics of Homer and how he taught, or how he wrote the Odyssey and how he performed it. He performed like a book of it or a chapter of it each night. And I was inspired to try to take that experience that people used to have and bring it to a modern prose audience.
So, Benedict, this is your copy of the book, the German version. Have you ever seen it before?
I have, actually, yeah. My German publisher is quite nice about these things. They send me a couple of copies via airmail post from Germany each time a new one is due to come out. So that one is called Veiled in English, I think, instead of Das Ratzel von London.
Das, genau,
Sorry for the pronunciation.
No, it's quite good. So, excuse my pronunciation. The original title is Veiled, or Alex Verro's 6, or the 6th book of it. You wrote a couple more of it. So what's happening in this book, if you remember?
In this one, that was the one that, so with the Alex Verro series, I tend to get bored with writing the same sort of book all the time. So one thing I did in that period with the Alex Verro series around books 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, is I kept on changing the theme a bit for each one. And they're all within a slightly different genre. So that one, Veiled, number 6, is the one where it was Alex Verro's crossed with a police procedural. So Alex ends up joining the magical law enforcement arm of the British Council, and he gets partnered with a more experienced police officer who he's known from the previous books, and they work on a case together.
So a question from the audience to both of you. What is the hardest thing in world building, and what is the easiest thing for you personally? Kevin?
Well, the easiest thing, I suppose, is thinking about how a country's economy is going to work and how many different people are out there contributing to everything. But the hardest part is then choosing what to focus on, because there's so much complexity out there, and you have to choose what, where your focus is going to be as you're narrating. So I think that that it's really the key to telling a good story is picking a point of view that's going to compel readers and also yourself as a writer to write something compelling.
And Benedict, what is your favorite thing in world building, and what is the hardest?
To be honest, I actually find world building is the easier part, because you're creating this entire fictional environment, a world, a story, and so on. And you can pretty much just work on it for as long as you like, or as short a time as you like, and you can just pile up more and more material. But once you actually come to the point of writing the book, then you have to make it into a story that's interesting and keeps the reader's attention the whole time. That's much, much harder. The hard part is taking all the world building work you've done and turning it into a story that's interesting from page to page.
And you both did it in a wonderful way. A question for Kevin from the audience. How did you come up with the story of Atticus and his dog Oberon? Or Oberon? Sorry, my pronunciation.
Well, yeah, I wound up having, I wanted a hero who could talk to his dog. And because I love dogs. And so I actually began with Oberon. And once I wanted to have somebody talk to him, I had to decide, how am I going to come up with a character that is the dog's friend rather than like a master kind of relationship? And so witches and wizards tend to have that familiar relationship where, you know, the animal companion is more of a servant, and I didn't really like that vibe. I wanted it to be a friendship. So a druid seemed to fit the bill a little bit better. And then once I started researching druids, then it just made a lot more sense to me, and it kind of built from there. So yeah, I started with the two main characters, and everything kind of snowballed on me as I went.
So I understand that you love dogs and would like to talk to them. And Benedict, that's a question for you, actually. Are you afraid of spiders, or would you like to meet the spider in your book?
I've had a really tough time understanding you there. There was a lot of static or feedback. I don't know if that was for me or Benedict.
It's for Benedict. It was a question about spiders. Did you get the question, or should I repeat it?
You said something about spiders?
Oh, okay, I repeat it. The question was, are you afraid of spiders, and would you like to meet the spider in your book?
Okay, so the first question was, are you afraid of spiders? And the answer is not really. I mean, probably the one in my book, Arachne, I'd find pretty scary if I actually met her, because she's the size of a minivan. But particularly over here in England, we don't actually have any dangerous spiders here. It's not like Australia, where some of the ones you meet are lethally poisonous. The spiders in England are completely harmless. So being afraid of them is just an emotional thing rather than they're actually dangerous thing. What was the second question? Did you ask why I put a spider in my book?
If you would like to meet it, but you said it. Yeah, and why did you put a spider in your book?
Oh, well, the thing is, when I wrote the first book, Fated, I just had the last 4 novels that I wrote being rejected one after another. So by the time I got to Fated, I wasn't really being very serious anymore, since I had no expectations whatsoever. So I just put in the first thing that came into my head. So I wanted Alex to have a contact, a sort of friend, and I just thought, okay, who could he be? Let's pick something really strange and random. Okay, his contact is a giant talking spider who makes dresses. And I just ran with that. There are quite a lot of things like that in Fate, and these completely random things that I threw in because back then I wasn't actually expecting the book to get published. So I wasn't really thinking too hard about it.
And a question to both of you. Do you like plotting or the actual writing more? Kevin?
Oh, yeah, I really enjoy the writing, especially when it gets to, some of the funny parts. I basically am writing to entertain myself. And so I was very amused by Benedict's thing about the spider. Go ahead and entertain yourself, because if you're not going to be entertained, then nobody else will be anyway. So I really do enjoy the writing process and making myself laugh, as I go.
So what is actually, Kevin, what is the fun part? The fighting scenes, or what is the fun part you're talking?
A lot for me is the dialogue and puns and, Shakespearean quote duels and things like that. The fight scenes are actually the toughest things for me to write. I'm not much of a fighter, but I use comic books as an inspiration for the way a fight scene should flow. And so when I grew up reading comic books, and so that kind of taught me how fight scenes should kind of play out. You look at them from different angles, and there's giving and taking of advantage. So that wound up being part of the way I write my fight scenes, but they're the toughest, hardest things for me to write. They take the longest.
And Benedict, what do you prefer more, plotting or actually writing?
Plotting is more fun a lot of the time. Writing is more work. Because when you're plotting, you can just think up everything, but when you're writing, you have to do all the hard work of making it actually fit together properly, and then edit it and adjust it afterwards.
And is writing fighting scenes for you also tough, or is it fun?
No, it's the exact opposite. Actually, I find the fighting scenes the easiest because I'm a martial arts hobbyist, and I've got an interest in tactics and strategy, games and activities and things like that. So it's usually no trouble at all for me to think of how a fight would flow, or that people would interact and so on. I generally find that dialogue interactions a lot harder to write.
I'm thinking about a great crossover where you guys write together, a big crossover of time traveling, a guild and Alex. Yeah, let's think about it later. We have a little game prepared because we know that some of your characters pretend to have another identity and then have a secret identity. We wanted to play with you two truths and a lie. And you all prepared something. So Kevin, would you like to start with your 3 facts?
Okay. So in my past, before I was a writer, I had 3 different professions. So I was a singing waiter, a door-to-door salesman, and a donut/pastry baker. 2 of those are true.
Okay. Do we want to Benedict, do you want to answer right away, or do you want to present yours?
Let's do Kevin's first, so
okay.
I can remember.
Okay. He had 3 jobs. It was. Can you repeat it? It was.
Yeah, I was a singing waiter.
Yeah. And
a door-to-door salesman, and a donut/pastry baker.
Okay. Benedict, you go first.
What kind of songs did you sing?
Oh, I sang like show tunes. Oklahoma, Hello Dolly, things like that.
What kind of voice are you?
I'm usually a baritone. I can't really hit the high notes.
Okay, that actually sounds pretty plausible.
Benedict, you're really, yeah, I know that you kind of Sherlock Holmes questions. It's really good. I'm just astonished. I'm just watching. It's amazing. I would ask, what kind of pastry would it be? Like, what kind of donuts?
Well, the donuts are sort of your basic frosted ones, and then you had the little fun, frosting bags that you get the jelly you get to squirt inside of the jelly-filled ones. The typical thing you might see at a Dunkin' Donuts or a Tim Hortons up here.
Okay. So did you only deliver them, or did you bake them too?
I was baking them. Yeah.
Okay, Benedict, what do you say? You have one question left.
Where did you do door-to-door sales?
Was it when or where? I'm sorry. Where? It was in Newark, Delaware. It was kind of I didn't realize that Newark, Delaware existed until I was sent there to be a door-to-door salesman.
Okay, Benedict, what do you say? It's amazing stories, all of them. Well, Benedict, what do you say?
I'm inclined to think that the baking one is the lie, because I have somebody who actually tried to get into baking in my friend group, and apparently it takes so long. And the training period is just so extensive. I have the feeling that if Kevin had actually done that in the past, that would probably show in his books, and Atticus would moonlight as a pastry chef or something.
That was like a Sherlock Holmes answer. Yeah, I think that it's alive with the pastry, but just because of the fun, I will say that Kevin, you look like a person who can sing, so I think that you haven't been a salesman. Okay. So, tell us.
The donut thing was the lie. I have been a door-to-door salesman and a singing waiter. So.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Very good questions.
Very good question. So, Benedict, it's now your turn. Two truth and a lie.
Okay, 2 truths and a lie. Let's see. So, the 3 things, they're also my past history, but they're less about my jobs and more about things I've done. So, the first one is I once punched a lottery winner in the face. The second is I once had a tiny wound that bled for 5 days. And the third is I used to make side income playing card games.
Wow. Amazing facts. I hope all of them are true.
Only 2.
2 truth and a lie. Kevin, your first question.
Well, I'm wondering, a small wound that bled for 5 days. I mean, do I dare ask where that was located, that particular wound?
It was a PG appropriate. So it was in my arm. I ran into a car door at fairly high speed, and it turns out that narrow puncture wounds into your muscles, they don't bleed very much, but they keep on bleeding for a really, really long time. So to begin with, I just ignored it until the blood kept on trickling, and I ended up sticking the plaster on it when that wasn't enough, and then I had to put a wad of something to soak up the blood, because there wasn't very much blood, but it kept on sort of trickling out for ages and ages, and I had to keep doing that for days until it finally stopped.
At no point you went to a doctor. You just, hey, I'm just going to put some cotton on that.
It was only like a hole a couple of millimeters or something across, so it didn't seem that important.
Okay. All right. I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah, me too. Martial artist, maybe that helped. And the question of you punched a lottery winner in the face?
Yes.
How much did you win?
It was a national lottery jackpot, so it was a few million pounds.
Wow. Okay.
How did you punch his face? How did he manage to make you angry?
He didn't make me angry. The boxing coach for the gym I was at wanted a sparring partner for the guy.
Okay.
Okay, of course. And yeah, Kevin, your question. This is really hard.
So the last one, I actually have forgotten what the last one probable fact is.
I used to make a small side income playing card games.
Playing cards. Okay, so the card games, was this like poker or bridge or?
It was poker.
It was poker. All right. I think that the bleeding for 5 days thing is the one that I would call a lie in this particular case. I think that the poker and the punching in the face is entirely believable, but I'm not sure about the bleeding for 5 days.
Okay. I look at Benedict and I think the bleeding thing is absolutely true. And the punching in the face is true. I think that with the card games and the poker is a lie. I don't know why.
Well, Kevin is right. I did. I
suck at this game. I'm horrible.
Well, half of the story is true. I was skating in London and I ran, and basically someone opened the car door on me, and I drove myself into the point of the car door and went into the muscle of my arm. But as it turns out, the muscle wounds only bleed for like 12 hours. So it was for much longer than I expected, but 5 days was a massive exaggeration. It does close up on it a lot faster than that.
Great story. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, great, Kevin. So it's one point for each other. Okay, so it's now my turn. I had to write it down because I'm a terrible liar. So 2 truth and a lie. I once dipped the face of my older sister in hot boiling lentil soup. I started to write a science fiction book when I was 15, and which I never finished. And this year in November, I will finally self-publish it. And I started my career when I went to the red carpet with a little camera, with a Venom shirt, and I asked Tobey Maguire that he owes me the money because I'm the real Spider-Man.
Why did you shove your sister's face into the lentil soup? And was it delicious?
So it was lentil soup. I was a little boy, and my sister loved lentil soup, and I, as a child, hated it. So she made fun of it, that we both have to eat it, and she's like, ha, 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 and then I decided, because I saw it in cartoons a lot of times, that I liked it. She's like, ha, ha, and she thought that I'm not doing it, and she's like, ha, 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 and then bloop, and then of course the whole face was in lentil soup, and she started crying. First I was laughing, and then I started crying too. So we both end up, so my mom came in, seeing both children crying, my sister filled with boiling lentil soup, and yeah. But now I love lentil soup, but back then I hated it.
Let's see. Actually, yes. How long was the novel that you wrote?
How long? How many pages?
300. No, how many words?
I don't know the words, actually. I know it's 300
that's
pages.
There it is. There it is. If he doesn't know the word count, that's it. That's it.
What? Why?
Well, you see, writers all use different formats for the formatting for their books. Like some people will have 500 words on a page, some will have 300 words on a page, some will have 800 words on a page. So you measure everything in word count.
No, that's not true. Like I said, I want to self-publish it. You don't even want to know what the story is about? Just say like, I started writing it when I was 15. The whole group here is laughing, by the way. I just write it down, and it's 300 pages, and I didn't count the words. Well, so your final guess. So no one is asking me why I asked Tobey Maguire that I'm the real Spider-Man. Okay, so what do you think? No one wants to know about my book. It's called The Supreme, and it's a science fiction. Okay, so go away. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that the book thing is the lie of the three.
Yeah, I'm with Kevin on this one.
It's amazing. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've like I said, I really suck at this game, really bad. So you both
perfect
win.
Question, Benedict. That was perfect.
It's a mean question, okay, but I have to work on that thing. Okay, know the words. How many words does your book have, Benedict?
My Alex Verus novels are pretty much all in the 90,000 to 100,000 word bracket. I don't know what Kevin's are at, but it's probably not that far off that.
Yeah, it depends on your genre. If you're urban fantasy like we are, then it's anywhere from 80 to 110. And then when you get over 120, 140, then you're into epic fantasy. So the epic fantasy that you have for me there was actually 210,000 words, and that's in English. I think in German it's longer. So.
Yeah, you're right. In Germany, we talked about it before. It's like 20 to 30% longer because we love our language and try to keep talking all the time. We have some other questions from the audience. How do you celebrate after finishing your book?
I take a day or two off, and then usually I have like a really nice whiskey that I've been saving, and I will open that up once I finish a book and have a drink. But then I usually like to also go off for a trip somewhere, whether it's it's usually some kind of road trip into nature, and that's another way that I like to celebrate.
Benedict, how do you celebrate?
Well, this is going to sound a bit sad, but usually after a day or so after finishing my book, I tend to go into a mild depression. because I've been writing this same thing for 6 months at least, not counting planning time. And so when it's finally done, I don't really know what to do with myself anymore, and I end up just sort of moping around without anything to do.
And let me guess, then you go to a boxing club and beat the shit out of a lottery winner. Because you did.
That would be one way of working off your feelings, yeah.
We actually didn't celebrate that you did. So, guys, do you have a quick little message to your German readers? Because we're coming to an end right now. It was really, really fun talking to you. Kevin, maybe you start.
Oh, yeah. I really enjoyed the visit that I got to make to Berlin a few years back. It was wonderful. It was actually an inspiration for some work that wound up being in the 8th book of the Iron Druid Chronicles. And I hope to get back to Germany again sometime. And I'm so grateful to you all for reading. I really, really appreciate it. You should have the 2nd book of I guess it's called The Songs of the Bard, or, you know, it's called The Seven Kennings in the United States, but I'm not sure what the series title is there in Germany. And then I also have the 2nd book of the Ink and Sigil series coming out as well in Germany very soon. It'll be called Papier und Blut. So there you go. Thank you so much.
So, Benedict.
Yeah, actually, the main thing I have to say is I'm really grateful to all my German readers, because when I originally got told by my agent they'd managed to get a publishing deal with Landverley in Germany, I really had not expected it to be anywhere near as successful as it has been. And instead, it's really blown up. They've kept on bringing up more and more, and now I've just recently signed contracts to Landverley that they're going to keep on bringing them out at the rate of two every year. So I think it's about by 2023 or something, the last book in the Alex Verus series is going to be coming out over there. So thanks to all my German readers for liking the book so much. I'm really appreciative.
So we hope that you both are coming to Germany soon. Thank you very much for your time. It was a lot of fun. A big applause. And yeah, thank you. And I hope to see you in Germany soon. Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Ja, ihr Lieben, wir kommen langsam zum Ende. Jetzt noch mal als Tipp, wenn ihr jetzt gerade das Ende schaut, jetzt noch ein bisschen warten oder bei den anderen Clips vorbeischauen. Da könnt ihr nämlich noch bei unserem Gewinnspiel mitmachen. Unser Bookstock Fantasy kommt langsam zum Ende. Es waren 3 fantastische Tage. Es lohnt sich, wie gesagt, noch die alten Clips sich anzugucken, denn da könnt ihr noch beim Gewinnspiel mitmachen. Einfach bei Instagram, IGTV nachschauen oder bei YouTube einfach einen Kommentar hinterlassen, was euch am meisten Spaß gemacht hat, warum ihr Fantasy-Bücher liebt. Tobt euch aus. Bis heute Abend 23:59 Uhr habt ihr die Möglichkeit mitzumachen. Morgen werden schon die Gewinner dann ermittelt. Ja, das war es auch schon von Bookstock Fantasy. Es hat sehr viel Spaß gemacht. Vielen Dank an die Technik hier. Ich sehe so aus, als wäre ich alleine. Hier ist es voll mit Leuten, die sich extrem angestrengt haben. Also vielen Dank an die Technik hier. Vielen Dank an Hugendubbel. Vielen Dank an Larissa, an Patrick und das ganze Team, die hier mitgemacht haben. Großen Applaus hier an meiner Stelle. Und ihr Lieben, ja, lest weiter. Es hat sehr viel Spaß gemacht und hoffentlich bis zum nächsten Jahr bei Bookstock von Hugendubbel. Bis dann, ihr Lieben. Danke, ciao. Oh, danke sehr. Magischer Wald.